Okay, it looks like the time has begun, and I'm just going to let Beth give me the thumbs up. Let me know if I'm ready to go. Started, Beth? All right, welcome everybody. It's great to see you this afternoon, and I want to just give you a little bit about myself. To start things off, for those of you who are not familiar with me, my name is Andy Wheelock in the real world. I have a blog called Coffee with the Week, and I'll show you. It looks something like this. I'll just paste this into chat. And I also run a group here in Second Life called the Virtual Pioneers. And when I say run, I mean I'm part of the group, and we have a great staff of people that work together, including Serena Off Course, Beth Ghostraven, Jackson, and our kind of gang here, including Sidearm as well. So it's kind of funny. I start thinking about people's names in both Second Life and real life, but here is that group. If you would like to join us, our events are free, easy, and I think pretty fun. We go on tours of a lot of historical sims, and we also have kind of special events. Sometimes we have historical costume parties, all based around history and culture. So I hope you'll join us. It's usually a Sunday night, 5 p.m. SL time. So that's a little bit about me. I'm a technology integrator in Western New York. So I go to a lot of schools in the area, and I do technology integration. I've been a 15-year classroom teacher, and now 13-year class. Getting old. I'm getting old. The old pine era, I guess, but still young and excited about doing some new things. So I'm just going to attach a speakeasy so that you can see the text of my presentation as well. I'm not very good at a person who reads from a teleprompter, so forgive me if I go off course, but I'm going to try and stick with the teleprompter because it spent some writing this. So if everyone's got their seatbelts on and they're ready to go, I'm going to start my presentation called The Assassination for William Johnson. So assassination is an intense word, to be sure. In most contexts, it conveys images of violence and murder. However, I want to be clear from the outset. The assassination I'm going to relate is an assassination of character and an assassination of the truth. Let me provide the takeaway for the session up front. We as educators, innovative though we are, we must stand for truth. And we must stand against those who will tell lies. I'm here with you today to do both. So let me begin in 1738. William Johnson, at the age of 22, emigrated to the British colony, that time, of New York, from County Meath, Ireland. With 12 other Irish families, William tended to land provided to him from his uncle, Peter Warren. Over time, William met and interacted with the Mohawks, who were part of a powerful confederacy and an empire of Native Americans commonly known as the Iroquois, but in their own language known as the Haudenosaunee. Today, they are often referred to as the Six Nations, which are Seneca, Onondaga, Oneida, Tuscarora, Cayuga, and Mohawk. In New York, where I live, they are still a people with a rich history and have influence and power in New York State. William began a trading post in the area, and due to his fair treatment of the Mohawks, and in particular, built trust and respect. He learned their language and attended ceremonies and councils. Eventually, he was adopted into the tribe or nation and became a sachem. This is quite a distinction, an incredible distinction for its day, and demonstrated his skills of leadership, friendship, and diplomacy. He was bestowed the Mohawk name of Waragiage, loosely translated to mean the doer of great things. His first home, Fort Johnson, was a stone and mortar home in the federal style of architecture of the day. And throughout New York, you'll still find that style of architecture quite a bit. I'm just going to advance the slide so you can see some of his homes. It provided maximum protection and was located right along the Mohawk River. William later moved to a bigger version of Fort Johnson, same federal style, and named it Johnson Hall. He gave Fort Johnson to his son John, and both of these homes would have been lost in the American Revolution, but were spared from destruction by the American forces. Barely. Today, you can still see the axe marks in the stairs of Johnson Hall that were from American soldiers ready to chop down the wooden staircase to make a fire to burn the house down. Thankfully, I believe, it was spared, and you can now visit both of these homes and learn about Sir William's home and his career, and the town he founded, Johnstown, New York. And you're probably seeing a pattern here. Yes, Sir William named almost everything after his last name. So Johnstown, Johnson Hall, Fort Johnson, quite a list, but you can see the pictures hopefully in the frame, and I will be providing you resources after. Yeah, friendly but humble. In the resources, I'm going to provide for you a Google project map that'll kind of take you on a virtual tour of all of Johnson's homes from County Meath. Well, you won't see his home, but you'll see his both Fort Johnson, Johnson Hall, and also the battles that he was part of. Yeah, and actually, I believe the church in town is St. John's. So, a sad note to mention here, though. Like most men of his age, William kept journals and notes, and sadly, many of the notes and letters were lost in a fire at, I believe, the New York State Museum in the early 1900s. And I think they were also lost due to water damage. But the remainder can still be obtained, and in the notes I share at the end of my presentation, you'll be able to find the digitized version of the papers of Sir William Johnson if you want to learn more. It's good reading, I think. Sir William was also making a name for himself in British societal circles, especially in the military. Since he often went to Albany to represent the Haudenosaunee interests, he was given the military title and over time became the superintendent of Indian affairs for the British. In 1746, he was appointed to the colonel of the Six Nations. In this role, he was part of and eventually led expeditions and battles against the French in the famous, at least in New York State, Battle of Lake George and the taking of Fort Niagara in 1759 during the French and Indian War, also referred to as the 7 Years' War. Look at the page, you'll see a couple examples in the presenter slide. You'll see Fort Niagara, which again you can visit today. And should you visit Fort Niagara, if you go into the officers' quarters, there's a picture of Sir William. And you can also visit the battle site of Lake George as well. I'm just waiting for my speakeasy to go. There we go. William's life and story was a true Dances with Wolves, if you're familiar with that movie, tale, that it was so impressive that it's so impressive that no movie has yet done it justice. Ironically, after the success of Dances with Wolves, with Kevin Costner, of course, Graham Greene, there was an attempt to put Williams and Mohawk war sachem Joseph Brandt's story to film. It was a made-for-TV movie and actually starred quite a few of the people from Dances with Wolves, and it was called The Broken Chain, which featured a young Hollywood beefcake by the name of Pierce Brosnan, starring as the role of Sir William. And I'll pause here for some swooning. Remember, Pierce Brosnan was pretty big in his day. Thanks, Pat. So, and also, I should give credit as well. I think the Native American actor who played Joseph Brandt was, Wes Studi was in it. He's pretty famous as well. Just see if I can't find that. I would like to give him credit. What was, of course, I'm looking through the, well, I'll have to find it. I did put in my resources the link to the film, but Graham Greene was also in it. Floyd Westerman, if you remember him, passed away, I think, recently in Wes Studi, of course. So a lot of famous native actors as well as Pierce Brosnan, but that was one of Pierce Brosnan's early films. Again, not great, and I think if you were to truly make the story of William Johnson, you would want to probably do a miniseries. So Johnson would befriend many Mohawks, but key figures in his life were Chief Hendrick and Joseph Brandt, whose lives are just as interesting and filled with achievement and loss. Brantford, Ontario, for those of you who are familiar with Canada, Brandt, New York, are just a few locations named for Joseph. Joseph would later fight in the American Revolution for the British, and by the end of the war would follow the defeated British to Canada and settle what is now the Six Nations Reservation in Canada. There are various perspectives of this from Mohawks that I have talked with personally. Some feel betrayed by Joseph for leaving behind their ancestral land in New York to go to Canada. Keep in mind there is still the Mohawk land in New York State and Akwesasne. But again, so there's controversy about every figure probably in American history or history in general. But there's others that also, saw him as truly a warrior and loved his people and wanted to bring peace and friendship. And of course, because he was allied with the British, wanted to be among friends with the British. And and my own personal opinion, for what it's worth, is that Joseph fought and on the front lines for his people and his way of life. I think that courage and bravery on behalf of the Mohawk people should be commended and respected. Most historical figures, again, like most historical figures, it's, and forgive me, my speakeasy isn't going to show everything here, so let me pick it up from my notes. Right. Let me just see if I can find that. So I guess to finish up that sentence, like most historical figures, it is easy to judge from far away. Being in that moment, I think, is often difficult. And I think as historians, as educators, we need to try and pull ourselves into that time period. And let me just, I'm going to read this. I don't know if it'll come up on the speakeasy, but I don't want to kind of lose my thread here. So also notable in William Johnson's life was his common-law wife, Molly Brandt, who was the sister to Joseph. Johnson had, and Molly had 7 children. Sadly, not a picture of Molly exists from the time, and her burial place is still a mystery today. By most accounts, like Joseph, she was fluent in both Mohawk and English and could entertain as both English lady and Mohawk clan mother. She too ended up leaving New York during the American Revolution, and that Sir William and Molly had a relationship during this time was unique and challenged cultural norms. And so I feel that Sir William was quite the Renaissance man in that particular case. Let me just see if my speakeasy, yeah. So my speakeasy should be up to date. And let me just move my slideshow so you can see it. Up on the screen now, you should see, and I just want to make a quick note of this, and again, this isn't in the speakeasy, but if you look at the main section, you'll see a famous picture of Johnson Hall that you can see. Again, I would encourage you, and again, I'll put the resources for you when we're finished here with the caption, and so you can see that picture close up. It's an amazing picture of Johnson Hall as it would have been. You'll see along the bench, you see like British soldiers sitting on a bench and the native, most likely Mohawks, but William Johnson did entertain American nations from across really the western part of New York, western part of what was then the colonies of New York. And again, all of those native nations had well. But it's just a fascinating picture of what Johnson Hall may have looked like. And again, you see a council fire in the middle, so it would have fascinating group. There was 2 blockhouses on both sides of Johnson Hall that could be used for storage and protection. So neat place, and I would encourage any of you come to New York, check it out. It's right near Albany. So as fortune would have it, or call it Providence. Oh, wait, I want to just pause there for a second. Again, in that picture, on the left-hand side is Johnson Hall as it, is a representation of what it would have been. On the right-hand side is actually a picture some people have attributed to William Johnson, but it's not. I believe it's Guy Johnson or Guy Johnson. I'm not sure how he pronounced it. Probably Guy, of the English version. That would be William Johnson's nephew. But what I love about the picture in the frame, and again, I'll share with you that picture. I believe it was by Benjamin West. It's a really awesome picture. And I believe that there's a Mohawk chief behind him, and it is listed in that. But what I like about this is you see the kind of 2 worlds that William was living in, even though Guy, this is a picture of Guy. He has the British coat on top, and the bottom he has the leggings of a Mohawk warrior. So it's a fascinating picture. Guy ends up really kind of taking over for William, and I'll kind of that little chapter in just a minute. I love this painting. Again, this was done during the times, and I love how, we often forget that art can be such a window to the historical world. And it's something that, for me as an elementary teacher, I wish I had focused more on. It's art and music class. So valuable to understand. Good question, Beth. The painting on the left, again, was done was done, I believe, maybe in the 1700s, maybe 1800s. Again, I have the reference resource in links that I'll share with you at the end, so you could look that painting up. But yeah, so that would have been a representation of the time. I don't know if it was taken. This artist saw the event happen. And then the one on the right is a portrait of Guy, so that would have been a sitting portrait. So they're not contemporary. That's what you're after. So I'm not sure about the left one, if it's contemporaneous. So as fortune would have it, or call it maybe Providence, Sir William died in 1774. And for those of you who know American history, it was 2 years before the start of the American Revolution. Had William lived and was in good health, he would have most likely united the Haudenosaunee to fight with the British, which would have most likely turned the tide of the Revolutionary War in the English favor, because George Washington's soldiers would have been forced to return to their homes to protect their land and families. Without William, the Haudenosaunee were divided and never really rallied to the British side completely. It's a story for another day, but a deep story, and one that can bring stories of military strategy and of treaty making of George Washington after the war. And also, tears of regret of what have might been. So it's really interesting. Again, who took over for William kind of as superintendent of Indian Affairs, was kind of left to his son and Guy Johnson. They just weren't the leaders that William was. So, right. Yeah, they wouldn't have been, I wouldn't consider them primary sources, no. So the next picture in the frame, I just want to stop here and just show you. So on the left is a picture of Joseph Brandt. In the middle is a stamp that was made in Canada to honor Molly Brandt. And on the right is King Hendrik. It's kind of a rudimentary picture, but that was a key figure in William's life, one of the early influences and a kind of mentor culture. Good question. So King Hendrik, I should have explained this better. King Hendrik, in those days, Mohawk chiefs would have been known as kings, as kind of, again, an English vernacular, not a vernacular of their own. So it would have been a sachem. So he was often called King Hendrik by the British, but he would have had a Mohawk name as well. Yes, he was king of one Mohawk group. So, the Mohawks had a vast expanse of land, and they had, different villages that would have been Mohawks, but they would have been kind of had sachem. And again, it's a fascinating history. They would have also had clan mothers that were big parts of their governing system. So definitely worth. Yeah, again, Mohawks would have had quite a few, chiefs that would have controlled their kind of villages. And again, a lot of times they were anglicized to be called king at the time, especially in history books. As well as Joseph and Molly Brandt both had Mohawk names, as well as English. So why am I telling you this story of Sir William Johnson? Well, let's fast forward to the present. I'm going to put on the screen, if you want to do the QR code, there's also a link there that I'll put again in chat for the end of all my resources so we can talk about it. Actually, I'll put it in coming up here. So why am I telling you this history of Sir William Johnson? Well, let's fast forward to the present. As a former elementary teacher and lover of all things technology related, I had started seeing the video game industry start to dominate the cultural sphere and push boundaries of technology. I was fascinated by the prospect of using the principles of gamification and its ability to engage and tell stories. I would often hear my elementary grade students say they thought history was boring. Could immersive video games offer a way to teach history in depth by letting them view history in an immersive way rather than a passive way? Yes, absolutely. At the time, I started hearing about the video game Assassin's Creed. I would overhear student conversations about it, looking into it. And so looking into it, I realized the game had a history focus on it. Now, there's a whole line of Assassin's Creed games. As a fan of the game Medal of Honor, which was based on World War II, I was impressed that between levels, the game would give you true tales and documentaries about World War II. And it gave me a huge idea that video games could have a great opportunity for learning. So I went to buy a CD of Assassin's Creed. Yes, I bought the PC version. Now it's kind of not cool to do the PC version. You got to have the gaming console, right? Xbox, etc. I was immediately drawn to Assassin's Creed 3, which was set during the French and Indian War as well as the Revolutionary War, so it covered those two expanses of history. As I started to play it, I was fascinated by the storyline, which was basically you're a time-traveling assassin tasked to change the future by knocking off some of the bad guys of human history. It's all kind of linked to the Templars and the Freemasons, and that they formed this secret society, and you must kind of break up the gang, so to speak. As I started working through some of the levels, I came across a bearded character with greasy hair in a pub. Strange, his name was highlighted as Sir William Johnson. Must just be the name, right? Not a coincidence. They couldn't be referring to the real William Johnson that I knew so much about. And here's where I'll bring in some of my resources. Haven't pulled it up already. One second, I'll grab the share link. All right, and I'm going to just paste my resources in there. I will warn you, if you open the resources, there is one section that is a Google Earth map, and that will show you the homes of William Johnson. Word to the wise, and I should have said this first rather than last, maybe hold off on opening that up if you want to click on links while I'm chatting here, because it will springboard out to Google Earth, which is a pretty graphically intensive program, and it might really kind of bog down your computer. Just want to give that quick warning. But I do want you to focus on one of the resources, which I'll kind of give you a little tidbit here. You'll see all the references there. But let me carry on with my speakeasy. So it turns out in the game, coming back to Assassin's Creed 3, which I'll kind of refer to as AC3 from here on out, turns out it was Sir William, and the storytelling narrative is that he is a scoundrel attempting to undermine the Mohawks. And it turns out also that as you play the game, one of the levels involves traveling to Johnson Hall. And I must give them full props and credit here. The recreation of Johnson Hall is fantastic. The recreation of New York State's wilderness at that time was phenomenal. Thumbs up, 2 thumbs up for the art department of Assassin's Creed 3. In a fantastic recreation of Johnson's real-life home, what is your mission there? Well, to assassinate or kill Sir William. You are immersed in a fictional scene where Sir William is arguing with the Mohawks and he is ready to commit murder on them. Your job is to assassin is to kill him first. So it's kind of, in my mind, a shocking twist to do that. And let me just, I think I have some pictures from the game so you can take a look up. I'm loath to kind of put pictures within my paper here because I don't want to worry about copyright issues. So I'm going to paste kind of my Google search about Sir William. So if you want to click on those, you'll see the Assassin's Creed pictures of Sir William. And if you remember the pictures from the beginning, which I'll go back to on my slideshow, so those are pictures of Sir William, and you can see the Assassin's Creed version of Sir William as nothing looks nothing like the real Sir William. So they intentionally created him to not only be a bad guy in the video, but to look the part of the bad guy. So I was immediately thrown off. How could this be? Why would the creators do this to a historical figure with a clear record of helping the Mohawks? Why? Just to push a storyline? Just to add a historical connection? Now, I know what many of you may be thinking. Spiff, it's just some narrative storytelling, right? Or retelling. You know, there are lots of books that offer alternate history as a way to create a new story of a historical character and events. Sure, that's all true. However, I feel this was different. Most retellings of histories are of people that are already well known. So the alternate history is clearly understood by the audience. And if I could just pause here, and maybe we'll do a quick little what they call waterfall poll. So for those of you who knew who Sir William Johnson was before you came into this speech, or again, maybe if you did a Google search before you came to this, don't count that as knowing William Johnson, but just say yes if you knew who William Johnson was before this presentation, or no, you had no idea who William Johnson was. So if we can do that now, you can put a Y or a yes. Okay. So thank you, everyone. So again, and if I were to ask kids in New York State, where William Johnson was once lived, I would say you would get most of the same exact reaction. So are you building a game? I might. So I think you're proving my point. Many of you had no idea who Sir William was. I don't see a Y in there. So, and again, even in New York State, where he was home to, there's many people that wouldn't know who Sir William was. Now, if you lived in Johnstown or near Albany, you probably up. But again, as just a general rule, for me as a fourth grade teacher at one time, taught New York history, I would teach kids about, the native groups and that. That picture that I showed you earlier of Johnson Hall with the that was in the textbook for kids, but really didn't make much William Johnson in the text other than in the picture. So pretty remote. So getting back to my kind of story, or where I'm going with all this, there's no, in most cases, the historical figure that they're kind of recreating, so there's no deceit that's intended. And a good example of this is Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Basterds. Forgive my French there, but it's the name of the movie. Don't blame me, blame Tarantino. And in that particular case, the alternate history of Hitler is clear. We all know Hitler's dirty deeds and can cheer on the alternate history that's told in the film. So there really isn't any intentional deceit there. And it's quite a masterful film, I must say. However, in AC3, hardly anyone knows who Sir William is. He is a smaller scale historical figure, although I would argue he should be bigger on the early American historical landscape. And by changing his appearance, I think it was a deliberate attempt to smear his character and smear his history. So what about using this as a reference point for learning with students? Well, there are some teachers who have, believe it or not, used it. Here, in my links, I have an article about a teacher that used AC3 in his classroom. And while I applaud the idea, from the article, the students walked away thinking that Sir William was a scoundrel. When they go back to reading the material, they will know that, hopefully when they go back and read the material, they will know the truth, but there's no mention of reading a more deep, in-depth part of William's life. So and another of my points here is, like in real life, first impressions are everything. If students begin to learn about Sir William from video games, from the video game first, they will probably think of him as a scoundrel and may not do the deeper dive to find out who the true William was. And again, what bothers me about the game, and I linked a video replay of it in my resources, you can actually see the scene where you have to, as the assassin, kill Sir William Johnson. William Johnson is clearly combative with the Mohawks, which would not have happened. I mean, however you read the historical record of Sir William, he was side by side with the Mohawks and fighting. And that, again, maybe you can say he was, again, he got very wealthy from his trading, but I think he benefited. He went to Albany on behalf of the Mohawks time. I think it's a weak claim to say he was using the Mohawks just for his own out from trade. But again, he put himself on the Mohawks fight side, so he was with them, and again, his common law marriage to Molly says the same. Okay, sorry about that little sidebar. So to wrap this thing up, I think it is unfair in the least, but I would say cowardly of the creators to do this. Sir William and probably his family have little recourse to recover from the slander from the game. So, as an aside, there's also an extra level, just so you know, in AC3, it's called the killing of King Washington, whereby an evil George Washington becomes a tyrant instead of the father of his country, and the goal is to kill him off. Interesting twist, of course, and again, this may fall under the everybody knows who George Washington is, so they know that this alternate history is clearly an attempt to maybe make a play on one of George Washington's true virtues. When he was given the opportunity to be king, he said he would not. So they kind of play off of Washington's virtue and make him a tyrant by becoming king, and there you go. Again, I think you've got a little more wiggle room there because I think most people know that story. At least Americans do. So again, George Washington would have much more name recognition, so most people would have a better country to the would have a better, I guess, not sure why I put country there, forgive me, would have a better kind of perspective to the narrative. Yet, this also kind of disturbed me as an American educator as well, because say you're not an American student and you really don't know a lot about George Washington. Playing the game, you're going to get clearly probably a different idea of who George Washington was and his history. So let me wrap up to my point. My fellow educators, parents, historians, and even gamers, truth should be a virtue that we all share and advocate for. Perhaps we can't expect gaming companies to be truthful about their storytelling and narratives. But why not? Couldn't they have provided a great narrative without killing off Sir William and his historical record? Sure, they could have. But they intentionally didn't. And I think that's cowardly, to slander a historical figure that can no longer defend himself, and I'll stick by that. So now here is the challenge for us. Are we expected to play video games all day to find out about what historical references are? The quick answer is no. We can't do it all, right? We can't play video games all day just to check to see what the history is. However, most high-quality games provide wikis on their characters, etc. So if you see your students talking about a game with history, I would encourage you to have conversations on that. But go to the game's wiki and read their analysis. They'll often tell you the historical characters, and they'll put their twists of history right there for you to see. So you'll quickly be able to discern the truth of what they're doing. Perhaps most importantly, again, we can't hide video games. I'm not calling for canceling. I'm not calling for boycotting, anything like that. I think we need to engage our children and students in topics based off of gaming and historical gaming. Perhaps that's the takeaway from today's session, but we need to be wary. But as a larger matter, teachers, parents, historians, I give you this warning. Games and media are telling tales about history that may be highly inaccurate and or deliberately misleading. Is there a higher nefarious purpose behind it? I can't say, but there could be. Perhaps it's because I read the book 1984 in 1984. But if media can get you to deny truth, they can get you to deny everything you hold dear. Truth matters. That must be the lantern that guides us. Follow the truth, because that's what we do. To finish, I've provided links and resources, thank you, from this talk, and I hope you'll read about Sir William Johnson, listen to the creators. I put links to the creators and the writers of AC3 in there so you can see their interviews. They don't talk about Sir William, interestingly. They do say that they had historians review their narratives, but they won't name them. Go figure. There is History's review of AC3, which is slightly critical of their coverage of Sir William, but it is kind of willing to give them, the writers, a pass on defamation. I'm not so generous. So, thank you, everybody. I hope you'll check out, I'll put the resources once again in the chat for you. And if anyone has any questions, wants to get in touch with me, feel free to use the links and blogs. So, thank you, everyone, for coming. And if you're ever in New York State, come see Sir William. That's a great idea, Jade. Yep, exactly. It's a big challenge for all of us. It really is. So I hope you'll take on the challenge. And I really appreciate everybody coming out for this. If anyone would like their own copy of Johnson Hall, Serena Off Course made a copy of it at our Virtual Pioneers headquarters. Happy to get one for you. A little playhouse.
Name. Oh, sorry.
Okay, let me check out voice.
Loud and clear.
Voice good.
Thank you.